record. Shalom. Good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in New York State in 1981, now celebrating our 43rd year. Today is Sunday, October 27th, 2024, in the Gregorian calendar, and in the Hebrew Israelite calendar, since it's after dark, it is the 26th day of the 7th Israelite Hebrew month of Tishrei in the new Israelite Hebrew New Year of 5785. Welcome to episode 26 of our monthly seminar entitled Ancient Roots, Mothering, Roots, Nettles, and Sage, with three mighty women of the God of Israel: Mrs. J. Rivkah Asoulin in the Lower Galilee, Mrs. Chava Dagan in the Northern Negev, and Mrs. Gilla Weiss in Florida. All Annie Oakleys of our time, frontier ladies like Mother Jones, who said, "Pray for the dead, but fight like hell for the living." That's what we're trying to do by presenting programs like this, to give you ancient advice from the natural healers of our world, who usually, mostly, we're ladies. So we're happy to host this. And please support the work. I was told don't name people in the gallery, our guest from the land of Israel. And please support the work of Rivkah and Gilla and Chava. The links will be below, and support my work too. And now, without further ado, let me hand over the mic to Mrs. Asoulin, Mrs. Dagan, Mrs. Weiss, Chava, Gilla, and Rivkah. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Lowell. Aryeh, a lion for the Jewish people. This is actually episode 28, I believe. And we are 1 year into the war. I don't know what to call this war. Once upon a time, when I created my dossier on the war, it was called Chagim 2023. Now we've just passed Chagim 2024, Chagim meaning the holiday season at the beginning of the Jewish New Year. Our last podcast, we didn't have Gilla, and now we're so grateful to Gilla, who's joined us even with illness, can be here. But we did talk about Sukkot last time. And today is a day that many around the country have marked the 1 year anniversary. And so we would like to do that in our own special way, with hopefully some important tips that can help you and your families with the ongoing trauma of living through war. We had a really interesting event I was just talking about before the show started, with this brand new earthquake alert, which I guess is a new government euphemism for shockwaves. And it was super scary for our family in particular, in a way that the war has not been scary thus far. It's been scary, and certainly things have intensified in the north where I live in recent months, particularly I would say the recent month, 2 months, I don't know, they all blend together now. But this unique situation was a curveball. It was a shocking kind of warning. We understood that the sirens that are set up around the country here can actually broadcast voices, just like in 1984 or Brave New World. And they can broadcast voices from government representatives who can say whatever they want to say, and you hear it, and all your neighbors hear it. And then you have to make decisions that are best for you and your family, and then negotiate those decisions with the neighbors who've all received these instructions and may or may not agree with your decisions and may want to make different choices. It makes it all the more difficult to have personal autonomy living in the land at this time. So I could go on about that for a while, but the reason that I bring that up in particular is I thought we were doing pretty well, me and my family. We had our systems down. We've talked about it in past podcasts, things that we do to kind of, help navigate the system, navigate the ongoing trauma and stress. But this was totally a curveball. When the euphemism of an earthquake, meaning shockwaves, was sent as an alert, it happened to be the morning after Israel retaliated by attacking Iran, after Iran has obviously sent, or maybe not obvious to many people, has been sending their own rockets and weapons via proxy, but rockets directly from them, et cetera, et cetera. And the Israeli government chose Shabbat, this past Shabbat, yesterday, to kind of retaliate, I guess, or do whatever it's called in war. And knowing that now that earthquakes is a euphemism for shockwaves, and knowing that this came mere hours after the retaliation on Iran, where we have been constantly told the biggest thing we have to fear is nuclear weapons that Iran has, and this has been a primary concern of Israel. Does anyone remember Bibi Netanyahu standing up in the UN with a picture of a bomb and the red line and the whole thing? I don't even remember how long ago that was, but certainly years, talking about crossing the red line. So certainly getting an alarm saying there's an earthquake alert, which has never happened before in the history of Israel. There's no such thing as an earthquake alert. In other words, if it is an actual earthquake, you can't sound an alarm and say you've got 1 minute, like, to get to your safe room. Like, in 1 minute there'll be an earthquake, in 10 minutes there'll be an earthquake. That you can't do that. You can give windows, you can talk about seismic activity in the area, but that's about all. So knowing that, as I did, although many Israelis they don't have a lot of knowledge about, I was surprised, but about earthquakes. And knowing that this has been used as a euphemism for shockwaves, and then finding out that we had attacked Iran several hours before, just putting the pieces together, had a real fear of a nuclear attack for our family. And all of a sudden, we weren't doing so well. All of a sudden, all of the things that, all of our mechanisms that we had in place to keep calm and keep sanity and hold it together went out the window. So hopefully today we will be able to give some tips and talk about what can be done in that situation, what I've personally done in the past 24 hours to kind of bring my family and myself back together. And I'll pass it on here to Gilla and Chava, if you'd like to jump in. Maybe Chava, you've also got this going on.
Right. So October 7th happened, a year ago for us. So this has already been a whole year of nonstop war, just nonstop. So it's horribly sad to hear what's happening in the North. But I totally relate, because this is what we have been dealing with for all of these months. And yeah, all of a sudden you wake up and your whole world has just flipped upside down, and you don't know how to manage it. You don't know how yourself to bring everything into balance. And then there's children looking at you saying, okay, well, what do we do? And you have no answers, none, because this has never happened. You've never had to deal with something like this. And you just have to blindly get through each day, step by step, one foot in front of the other, and navigate totally unseen path that was never there before through the jungle. So we have had, thank God at this point, lots of experience and many trials and errors, and we are doing well so far. Anything can change at any time now. That's just the way things work. So I'll just sort of share a few things that have worked for us, for the kids. So a huge thing, living on the farm where we do, the hours after October 7th, early in the morning, it happened. We still have a farm to run. There are terrorists on the loose. No one seems to know where they are because magically there were no cameras. They are running all over and looking for trouble. And we still have a farm to deal with. One person cannot deal with it. So we go out in groups. I have all of my weapons. The kids even have weapons on them, you know, toy swords and trash can lids. I mean, they just had to feel that they were doing something to protect themselves. Obviously, those are not things that could do anything, but it made them feel empowered. And that was enough, because we had to run out and we had to feed the animals and take care of everything and do it quickly while keeping eyes open 360. And I think it really helped us was this going outside and being very physically active, even though it was fast, even though it was rushed. Getting this nervous energy out of you, which we all had, you have to be physical. You have to get physical. And I know they want us cowering in our mamad, in our safe rooms, staying close, you know, to the radios and the this and that, and basically being immobile. But what that does is all of this nervous bubbling energy is just bubbling inside of the body. And you're listening to more fear and more, you know, whatever they're reporting all the time, whatever. It needs to go out. It has to go out of the body. You have to find a way, even if it's not leaving your mamad, even if it's not leaving 5 meters from your radio, doing some sort of exercise, jumping, dancing, wrestling around. Okay, for us, it was literally chore work up until today. The kids will go out and expend massive amounts of physical energy, and they get it out of them so that the next wave of fear or nervous anxiety, whatever it might be, now they're ready for it because it's not built up from before. So they play a lot of sports. And we do a lot of work on the farm. And for us, that has been huge, just huge. And I've felt it myself. If I'm sitting here inside the house and I'm just letting it, you know, take over my body. But if I go outside and actually do something physical, I come back in and I'm like, okay. And then you feel ready for that new wave because you know it's coming. So that was a big one for us.
Thanks for sharing that, Chava. That's pretty amazing, really. So I don't have your experience, either of you. So I'm just going to speak of things looking in from the outside. And so one of the things that I would...
Gilla, we should mention that you did have a pretty serious storm situation very recently, which was very scary for Floridians. So
yeah. We prepare for it, you know. But one of the things that I would like to share with everyone is to take a good look at you, Rivkah, and you, Chava, and see how you model calm and how you model, it's okay, we're going to get through this together. Even when, like Chava, you said, I don't have the answers. And Rivkah, you got a real scare. You still are able to say, you know what, Ima's a little scared right now, but we got this. There's things we can do. And I think that that is both a burden on parents, on mothers, but at the same time, It's what we naturally do. And our kids look to us. They do. So that's first of all, even just the way you're giving over the information and the stories, it comes through in your voice and the stories. So since we are the three of us herbalists, I would suggest herbs. I would always suggest going to some herbs. So two of my favorite herbs, and I mention them because they are considered mild enough and safe enough for kids. These two herbs are skullcap and passion flower. So anybody who knows me, skullcap is my go-to. I carry it around in my little pink mini first aid kit wherever I go. Anytime a child, an adult too, but I'm going to address this mostly to kids. Anytime a child gets a scrape or falls or an injury or a sting or a bite, there is a level of shock and fear and stress. So one of the things I do before I even wash a boo-boo or a chicken peck or some other sting, I take out my skullcap and I will literally drop dose it. Straight neat. Just a drop or two or three, drop dose. Skullcap is a known calming herb. And one of the things that I love about skullcap, especially for kids during this time, is it's recommended for insomnia. It's been shown to help with restlessness and even help regulate better sleep. Sorry.
Gilla's modeling the herb taking for us right now with her illness. We had a little chat before on Messenger before the show to to go through her herbal regimen and see if we can suggest anything. Gilla, should we come back to you? Yeah, okay. All right, Rivkah Asoulin, cut that out. No more coffee. On that note about herbal medicine, I left so I could bring this in. Hang on, let's see if I can show it. You see this? This is a pitcher filled with iced oat straw tea, which I simmered for about 20 minutes. It's a nervine. And I'm making huge quantities, huge. So this is probably 2 liters, nonstop. Huge quantities of oat straw, Avena sativa, or any Avena is okay. That's the Latin name. And it's there are usually not contraindications. It's a nourishing herb. It's used as one of the Susan Weed's 5 nourishing herbal infusions. For frayed nerves. So this is when you get the shock that we had on Saturday morning on Shabbat, you know, having a nuclear threat, the sirens, the running back and forth, it wears on you. It'll fray those nerves. So I'm drinking this in large quantity. And as my children are, you know, dealing with the new waves of fear and all of those feelings, that's on tap for everybody. I have this on hand that I put together. I call it Inner Strength Tincture. So these are herbs that I've wildcrafted and put together for shock. It's really, we talked in the beginning of the war a year ago about treating for shock, which I was doing with my children then. But of course, you know, even when you think you kind of, I know Chava's going to talk about celery juice, but once you have your baseline, you know, and you've kind of got it all together and you're taking all your herbs and it's the new normal and whatever, but then that curveball, like we got this yesterday morning, this was super, super handy. And it was just, you know, a few drops for everybody right away. I put together different nervines and adaptogen plants, as well as plants for shock. So in this particular grouping, it was just what I had on hand, which is mimosa, the happiness herb, Alobesia julibrissin, ashwagandha, Witheria, I think that is, in Latin, the milky oat tops, Avena, Crataegus, which is hawthorn, and oh wow, I put in calendula. That was smart. If you've taken our herbal first aid course, you'll know what that's about, but it's basically for that kind of heart, a heart balm when your heart's sore, or, you know, that shock, the feeling of fear. Also, if you stop and feel where it is in your body, it can help you determine which herb you want to use. So if you're feeling that radiating physical pain in the heart during times of shock and fear, that's pretty good. And I used astragalus as an adaptogen here. But, you know, I've got Chava, which I don't have locally, so I do buy that. I don't wildcraft that. And, you know, the ones Gilla brought up, skullcap and passion flower, these are all kind of calming, soothing herbs. Learning the nuance, I recommend taking our herbal first aid class to start to understand that. But for anyone who's already working with the plants, I just wanted to offer that up. And then also alcohol. So I know that's kind of funny and it's kind of a joke, and, you know, I'm not encouraging anyone to be an alcoholic. However, if you remember from previous generations, what did you do when someone fainted or when someone had a shock? You would give them a little brandy, right? Or you'd give them a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of whiskey, just a little bit to kind of revive them. And it also acts as a nervine. So I have made my own Irish cream, which is in the fridge. I'm not bringing that out. But I do have an aperitif every so often, more and more often. Obviously, you don't want to dull your senses because you need to navigate. You have to have quickness. You have to have all your wits about you to do all these things. So I'm definitely not advocating drunkenness or alcoholism. What I'm advocating for is something to kind of calm, still your nerves. I remember during my first pregnancy, the doctor I went to, I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I was so confused. And he was like, just have a glass of wine and chill out. So there is, you know, this is medicinal. Alcohol is medicinal when used correctly. So I just wanted to bring this out as an example of a cognac that my neighbor gave to me as a gift, that he's been learning during these very stressful times that we've been living in. He's learned how to make this himself, which my father did also, would make his own wines. Didn't have to go through a war, to my knowledge, with them, but certainly this is a fine skill to have, making your own alcohol that can be used medicinally. And of course, we've discussed this in other times as well. For teething babies, you can rub a little bit of alcohol on the gum. It can give a baby a lot of relief. Again, we're not getting babies drunk. We're not, you know, we're not doing that. That's not what we're advocating for. We're taking a drop and rubbing it on the gum to help deal with pain. So there's a few more ideas there. Gilla, you want to pick up where you left off? You're muted though.
I will try. Thank you so much for bearing with me. This is life, right? Either it's a war or you're sick or there's a storm. So we go with it. I have my tea, lots of honey. Hopefully I get through this one. So I think I spoke about skullcap, and I like to either mix it with passion flower or to take them both, but separately. So passion flower and skullcap work so nicely together if you are lying there awake at night and you have that brain chatter that you cannot switch it off. I call it the monkey break. does not stop. And now, sadly, with everything you are going through, your kids, some of your kids now have that mental chat, and it's really hard to fall asleep. So passion flower is really known for helping to calm that mental chatter, which is huge. So together with the skull cap, these two work really, really well. Passion flower is also known for helping with restful sleep and is really easy, gentle for both adults and kids. So whether you make teas or you take tinctures and mix them with a little warm honey, little warm water and honey, any way that you or your kids would like to take this or drink this, you can make a tea from dried herbs. You can take tinctures and make tincture tea with honey. You can drop dose. Find what and how it works. So those are my two go-tos. Anytime someone has shock, someone has trauma, and can, especially when it comes to calming down and sleeping, skullcap and passion flower are both nervines, but they're not really sedative. So it's not like valerian that is more sedative or Chava that is more sedative. You're still focused. In fact, skullcap has been shown to help with focus as well. So it's a calming, grounding focus. And it's the kind of thing that you can give to the whole family. Give to your dog as well. Just dilute it a lot, but your dog can have a little too, or your cats, or your chickens. So those are my two go-tos for this type of thing, specifically when it comes to time to wind down. Because during the day, like Chava said, you know, you have distraction. You can jump, you can dance, you're busy on the farm. But when you lie down, you get a panic attack or you get the mind chatter. And these two herbs can be really helpful in the real and in the now. Chava, Rivkah.
So speaking of herbs, another way to bring clear, calm, new energy is through smudging or, you know, diffusing through the air. And we're, well, thank God not so much anymore, but I know Rivkah is. We used to practically live in our mamad in the very beginning. And when you have that many bodies in one little room and the window has to be shut and the door has to be locked and, you know, it just, and we're sleeping like that all night long, I needed to bring in some herbs to clear the air. You have to. The room starts, it feels heavy. The energy that people are putting out besides the regular, you know, perspiration and the smelly feet or whatever. There's a heaviness in a room when you're going through all of these emotions and anxiety and all of this. So I used to smudge a lot. I would use sage, rosemary, lavender, whatever I have in my garden, and diffusing also is the same kind of idea. I didn't have that, but that's another way to use herbs. And
Chava, can you explain what smudging is for people who may not know?
Oh, okay. So I would go out to my garden and pick branches of all of these things I just said, the lavender, sage, rosemary. I probably had a few other ones. And I basically just smoosh them all together and tie them with something that is burnable, like a vine or twine that's a natural fiber, and tie it real tight so that it stays together. If I have time, I would let it dry out a little bit because it doesn't burn so well. But I don't want it super dry that it just goes up in flame. I want it to smoke is the whole point. So you would light the tip and you just kind of wave it around in the air to keep that smoke going. Otherwise it kind of dies out because it's a mostly fresh bundle. and you're smoking it. That's what you're doing. These herbs are releasing their essential oils and everything else through this smoke as I'm taking it in every single corner of the room. Now I'll just do it in the entire house. But it really helps clear the air and clear the energy, and then you can start over. So it helps bring calm without having to even ingest anything.
Really, really great. One thing that Chava had mentioned to me earlier, and it's hard because when you're in the trauma, even though I know all this stuff and I teach all this stuff, but when you're in the trauma, it's very hard to heal yourself and take care of yourself, because you're like, some of the symptoms of shock are like this loss of memory of what you were doing before the siren, or before, or in the middle, or suddenly there's gaping holes. Wait, what was going on? Like, it's all trauma and shock response. And it can be really hard to think about it. And we were, Gilla was talking about it when we were discussing the show, and saying, it's ongoing trauma. It's not like you can go and you can just, heal it, or, like you have a kid, I have a kid who doesn't like being in crowds. And so, it's like, okay, we can avoid crowds, or I'll hold your hand and we can go take breaks whenever we need to. No, there's no breaks. There's no way to avoid it. There's nothing you can do. You have to face every single one of your fears and your children's fears if you're parenting through it. So one thing that Chava had reminded me about was using the essential oils, which we've always talked about, and they're so controversial and all of this, but this is a really quick and easy way. Small bottles, you have them around. One night where my children were particularly traumatized and really, really struggling with sleep and with calm, I diffused, a few drops of lavender essential oil and a tea light, diffuser. So that's where there's a tea light, and above it there's a little dish that you put water in. You put a few drops of your essential oil in, and then the tea light heats up the water, and then the volatile oils of the essential oil kind of permeate the room. And it made all the difference. I mean, immediately everybody calmed down. Everyone was centered again, because we have to get ready, like we already mentioned here, for round two. You have to get ready for the next one, and you don't know when it's going to be. And so you need to rebound and do it as quickly as possible. And you have to be ready, and you have to have your kids ready as well. So essential oils, really great. And the smudging that Chava mentioned, also super great. Any herbs that you have in your garden, just like Chava said. So rosemary, lavender, which are almost weeds here. Louisa, lemon verbena, that a lot of people have in their gardens, even lemongrass, or, I'm trying to think of common herbs that you'll find just walking around, planted in parks, basils, even, anything in the mint family, any aromatics, obviously, if you can do some advanced planning. I actually did like a Q&A for Sarah Hannah Silverstein's book that's coming out. So there's a plug for her. And we were talking about ADHD and kids who have special needs and things for that. So one of the things that I discussed there was picking out scents and essential oils. They're so specific to the person that while we can say, oh, lavender is calming and vanilla is, an aphrodisiac or whatever. Okay. When it comes, especially to children, but really for everyone, but especially for children, ideally, you'll want to take your kids to a store that has an assortment of essential oils and let them smell different essential oils and see what resonates with them. And ask them, how do you feel? This gives me energy. Does this make you energetic? Does it make you calm? Ask the questions, figure it out. When you find the herbs that, obviously, if you want your kids to be energized or whatever, that's great. But in this particular situation where you want people to be centered, calm, you know, if you've done the work beforehand where you know your children's preferences or your own preferences, which herbs calm you and center you, you can go right to those herbs, or right to those essential oils for either smudging or you know, diffusing and inhalation, aromatherapy, essentially. Chava, did you want to talk about celery juice?
Of course.
Go on.
So when we are stressed, filled with anxiety, fear, overworked, overwhelmed, overloaded, over whatever, our body uses so many minerals in order to keep the balance. Otherwise, we would be gone because we are overusing our own resources. And so what we have to do in order to keep calm, in order to keep level-headed, in order to continue to function, is replenish those minerals. And it's a huge array of minerals, all kinds of salts and the regular minerals that people think about, you know, taking, and not to mention B12 and vitamin C and magnesium, right? All of these things, but the minerals are what help, like, you know, brain synapses and all of the different things. So you have to think quick, and you have to think clearly and make it happen rather than just spinning around in circles like Gilla was talking about, monkey brain. You actually have to move forward. So many times in trauma, we have obliterated our resources from inside because our body is using so much just to keep our head above water, because we have been through something so traumatic, so stressful. Where we live is very close to the Gaza border. Yay. And for 20 years before October 7th happened, we lived literally under rocket fire constantly. My children never knew a day of no war. I mean, it's just crazy to think about. And it pretty much started when they pulled out of Gush Katif. We moved in here. So it's been the whole entire time that we've lived here. And in the beginning, you're little tiny children. And as they grow up, that stress internalizes and stays with them. And again, if you're not replenishing, you know, I was a young mom, I didn't know. We ended up having some serious issues with PTSD. Any loud, the door would slam, a car would start up too fast or too loud, someone would hit a bump outside. Any silly, ridiculous, meaningless, loud noise would send us into these places where, you know, you don't even know that they were there until it manifests itself. Massive PTSD for years. And, you know, you continue doing what you can, you read, you do all these things, and everything helps a little bit. But thank God we found celery juice, maybe 9 years ago or so. And everyone started drinking it, and that is absolutely filled with mineral salts. And almost immediately, within a few days, a few weeks, everyone's different. We literally felt relieved of this PTSD, stress-related feeling. And we went on for all these years. Literally, thank God that he sent this to us at this time of history, which is not history yet. And we are okay now. Even during October 7th, when my entire neighborhood flipped out, like there's no words for the flipping out that happened here. We were able to remain calm. We took care of everyone's animals. We calmed people down. They couldn't understand, like, why are we so calm? Did we not go through what they just went through? But we had been so many years on celery juice that we were able to find that level-headedness and continue and even help others to stay calm breathe. Let's talk about, what it actually is that we went through, not just the fear of what we think we went through. Anyway, it really helped. I feel not just us, but being here and being in that state of mind for the whole area. And I thank God that he sent us celery juice, and we continue until this day drinking it.
So we haven't been able to source it yet. And that's why I'm drinking this up, the oat straw, which you can dry and kind of save, and it's around. And so it's much easier. For celery juice, you need to juice the fresh celery juice. And we've talked about that. Chava has especially talked about this. But there are many paths, to all roads lead to Rome. It's not, if you can't source the celery juice, then, you've got oat straw, you've got all these herbs we've mentioned, and physical things. I was talking with a psychologist who's a neighbor of mine, and I was asking him how his children were doing with this. And I said, everything Chava just mentioned, the slightest sounds, everyone's on edge, everyone's, and we need to be. And I've tried to explain it to my children as well. Like, this is a good thing that you're all on alert, because we do need to get to a safe place or whatever when, we need to pay attention. We need to be aware. But I asked him how, he's navigating it. We talked a little bit about things. And one of the problems for some of my children was that we're hearing booms all the time. And so which booms are the ones that we need to take action about, and which booms are relatively far away and we need to be able to go on with our lives. And so one thing that he suggested to me was showing where these booms are happening on an actual map. So I was talking with my kids and I was saying, well, it's where your dentist is, or it's where this, but it's hard for little kids to understand distance. And it seems like it's right over your head. I mean, we see the clouds, we see the interceptions, but it's a 30-minute drive away. So it's difficult to know. So we did find that helpful as well, getting out a map and saying the ones we just heard, it was here, here, and here, and we're here. Which booms, the booms that shake the house, the booms that rattle the windows, those aren't always necessarily super close. There's acoustics, there's other things. So trying to explain it to the kids and show them this, and to let them know that their feelings of fear when they hear a boom is normal. It's a protective measure, and it's a good thing that we have it. We don't want to lose it. We don't want to get rid of it, but we also want to keep our fear in check. So I was telling the ladies about Natan Sharansky's autobiography, that I think this is a good thing to mention here. I've been doing this for myself because, as we know, if the parents don't have an inner calm, the kids will pick up on that. There's nothing you can do to help your children if you don't help yourself first and you don't have the inner calm. It's like the oxygen mask on the airplane. You got to put on yourself first and then help the child. It's like, to love others as yourself, right? You have to know what it's like to love yourself in order to love others. That's just how Hashem designed it. So I was noticing that every time there was a siren, and the sirens are unexpected. They come in the middle of the night when you're sleeping. They come when you're in the bathroom. They come when you're in the shower. They come when you're bathing your child. They come whenever, and you have no control over that. So I was noticing that I was having like a physiological reaction when these sirens would happen, that I would feel like revved up and fear and all of these things. And it was happening over and over and over. And this is exhausting, adrenally speaking, and nervous system speaking. Like, it's exhausting, it's draining. And I was finding myself completely exhausted. And so one of the things that Natan Sharansky talks about in his autobiography is when he was in solitary confinement and being regularly tortured during his time in Russia by the KGB. he worked on mind control. So he worked on control through the torture, control through pain, working through all those things. And hopefully we all have those mechanisms, which, by the way, we pull out now. So I've talked in previous episodes about taking the breath out, and an audible breath out, and counting for a breath out. That's what we use for pain. And we've talked about it in the herbal first aid courses we've done as well. But these come in just as handy for fear. In fact, that's part of what it helps with, is the fear of a physical pain. So anyway, those things you can be using, and Natan Sharansky was certainly employing those methods as well. But he noticed that when he was threatened with, I think the word was assassination, but someone correct me if I'm wrong. I think the word was assassinate. If it was a different word, put it in the chat. But he was threatened by his tormentors, by his torturers, with assassination. And he noticed that he was having a physiological response to the word assassination. He had fear, and he felt it in his body. And this was actually something that he knew he had to get under control, because whenever there's a weakness, that's where the cracks happen. And so he would spend his time in solitary confinement saying the word assassinate over and over again, and controlling his physiological responses, the mental responses, the emotional responses, controlling it all, so that he no longer would have a response to the word. He had no response whatsoever. And when he found that he had mastered that, he went in for his regular torture, and they threatened to assassinate him, and he had no response. His torturer got even more angry, increased the torture, then sent him back to solitary confinement, and the torture ended. It never happened again. It's something, if it's right in here, it radiates out. So what I did was sat in my times alone and thought about the siren, thought about the sound of it, thought about it over and over, thought about the word siren, thought about it from all angles, until I lost the emotional response to sirens. And until yesterday morning, when we had a brand new, totally new situation, the sirens that happened after that, it was like a trigger, almost like in hypnobirthing, for anyone who's done that. Instead of being a trigger of fear, it became a trigger of pure relaxation and calm. And when the siren happened, it was like, and then I calmly walk up and I gather my kids, and you can't fake that. Either you're having centered calmness, or you're not. You can't fake it. But when you do, and you have total calmness, and the kids are going, "You're so calm. You're not afraid," and it starts to work on the other people around you, which is really good, as Chava said, because when you're trapped in a small, heavy, concrete room, with people, you want them to be calm around you. You don't want chaotic energy, frenetic energy around you. Gilla, maybe you can talk about somatic exercise as well.
Okay, so one of the things that we can do for ourselves and our kids, and I'm going to say even more so for our kids because they're more open to this, and that is somatic exercises. And you can look up on YouTube, you can probably Spotify, there's podcasts, Instagram, there's just some really nice little clips of a simple exercise that you can do with your kids, and they'll probably even like it. There is one called the Vu-E-A, where you take a deep breath in and then you do the Vu and the E and the A when you breathe out, while tapping right over here. So you're tapping on the meridians. This is actually where some of the meridians meet. And so you're tapping that while you're doing that breathing exercise. Here we go again.
It got you, Gilla. Somatic exercise, yes. And Chava, we lost her. Hopefully she'll be coming right back. Oh, here she is. Chava, maybe you can talk about drawing as well. Yeah, the spotlight. Okay.
So We talked about the physical, getting physical outside, and then you're expending this energy. But sometimes we are inside, and we can't get out because whatever. And with kids, they don't always know how to express themselves verbally when these things are so stressful, so traumatic, causing such anxiety, but they don't have those skills yet to say exactly what they're feeling. So sometimes it's just easy and really fun for them to give them a pen and paper, or markers or crayons or whatever creative instruments that they can use, and then just let them go. And they will start drawing whatever these things that they're feeling. Sometimes it's just color that they're expressing, the red, the black, whatever. And sometimes it's shapes, and sometimes, and they're expressing without words what they're feeling or what they're seeing inside of their head, going on and on and on. And that really, really helps them to express. And then you can use that as a, and with older kids, of course, it can be, journaling and actually writing. But we really like this drawing thing for little kids. And then you look at it and you say, hey, what is that? What did you draw? And then they can begin to start explaining, and you can kind of get a feeling of what it is that they're trying to express. And then after it's over and they've really talked about it as best they can, and you have calmed them down and let them have that opportunity to just express themselves with no judgment, then they feel so much better. It's like a whole new child. This wash just came over. They're clean and they are ready to go on and be a regular kid again without all the worries and the anxiety until the next time. And that is something that's really, really been helpful with our kids.
Yeah, I love it. The buddy system. Chava talked about going outside. Sometimes you can't go outside because there's booms and there's sirens and you can't get out. And in that case, you still have animals. We still have the chickens. We still have the cats. They still, we still have the chores. The chicken coop was looking a bit not impressive. We needed to cut some herbs and hay and things and tidy that up. So a buddy system, that's been our kind of solution. No one goes alone. No one goes outside alone, because if you're outside and there's a siren, it is instantaneously calming to be able to look and see someone with you, and you're not alone, and you don't have to navigate as a child, especially running from the outside wherever you are into the house alone. So that's something very helpful, and just to be mindful of, even for us. I've told my kids, I'm not so comfortable being upstairs right now by myself. It's like the windows are rattling, boom, boom, boom everywhere. I'm like, but we got to make lunch. So, who's going to come up with me? I also want a buddy. I don't want to be alone through that. And obviously if I can do it on my own, then I will. But I also offer my kids the opportunity to be there for me, just like I've been there for them. And kind of modeling the family thing, when fights are starting, because the kids can act up and get aggressive, and when this is happening and when they're cooped up and all of these other things, and telling them, this is a time when families pull together. This is a time where we help each other. What's really going on, and just taking the time to sit down. You seem to me to be really afraid of what's going on. I don't think you're mad at your sister. I think you're afraid. And your sister's also afraid. Are you both afraid? And then let them kind of talk about it. And then it turns into a bonding experience because they're having a shared experience. And then I can kind of nudge them to help lift each other up through it, which again, keeps the peaceful dynamic that you need when you're in close quarters, not able to get out so easily. Chava talked about this in the beginning of the war a year ago. We made a podcast about it, but I can say from personal experience that Chava's idea of comedies, like finding the old comedies, finding all that stuff, super duper helpful. I had a child who was really, we've had a lot of interesting experiences where my kids have been out walking about and there's a siren, and they don't know if they're going to make it home, and they're running down the street, and so anyway, one of my kids was in a situation like that, and it was hard to kind of get out of that funk. It was really super scary. And I said, you know what, we're gonna watch Legally Blonde, the musical, because MTV aired that. You can go on YouTube and see it. YouTube is good for something. So and a couple of hours later, it was like everyone forgot about it. Everyone's laughing and feels light, and it's funny, and it was good, and it was such a relief, because otherwise you're like thinking about it and thinking about it. And also for the children who are literally caught in the crosshairs. So I had a child caught outside in an area that had, I don't know, like 200 rockets in one day, in the middle of all these barrages, and like running into public stores and whatever, and running to safe rooms, and then coming out, and there is shrapnel everywhere, and the cars around our car have their windows blown out, and they're driving through sirens and people at the side of the road. And this is intense stuff for the parents, and especially the kids. And so making sure to treat the parents first. You've got your herbs, you've got your alcohol, little sip of alcohol, to just kind of revive, get the nerves together, and so that you can really be present for the kids and talk about it, talk about feelings. Don't ignore it. Don't pretend that this didn't happen. It happened. It's real. It's not normal. And it's important to say it over and over. This isn't normal. It's not healthy. It's really scary. That stuff is really scary. We have some other things here, but I think maybe we should wrap up. Gilla and Chava, some final thoughts?
Just one big thing, and it reminded me when you were talking about Amelia, your daughter, how she was really taking this really hard. And during this time, when there's so much going on and things are flying.
That's a siren. It's a siren for me, so I'll be back in a minute. Carry on.
Kids feel really out of like nothing is in their control, and all of this is happening anyway, and there is nothing they can do about it. They can't stop it. They can't get away from it. And they feel very out of control, and it's hard to have that feeling of powerlessness, especially as a young kid, when you don't have experience with other things. And so they need, in whatever way this manifests itself, to create a feeling of having power. So I'll just give an example with Rivkah's child. She didn't want to leave the mamad for weeks while this has all been happening up north. She would go to the bathroom if she needed to as quick as possible and run back, but she took all of her meals, she played, she sang, she laid in the bed, she did everything all day long in the mamad, in the safe room. And no matter what the parents were trying to do, coax her out, let's go, snuggle in the bed, nothing worked. And in the beginning, Rivkah, I'm just speaking for her, she was, trying to figure out, what do I do? But there's a point where you're like, wait a minute, this is her way of making a decision, of bringing power back into her own body. And so you have to just step back and say, you know what, this is how she needs to deal with it, or whoever it might be, and just let it go. There's nothing abnormal. It's good to trust your instincts, make them feel very supported, not rushed and not pushed. And however that manifests itself, it might be, I'm going to sit on the rug and I'm never going to move. Okay, I get it. I understand you. I feel that way too. And, just let it happen, rather than, no, you must move and trying to fight it, because this is a child's way of bringing power and trying to make sense out of this powerlessness. And it's really healthy, and it helps them to adjust and then understand I do have power. I can bring it back in, and not all is lost. So that was a big one for me and for my kids too. We also went through that. And to help along with that would be stories. I'll just keep talking until they come back. We come up with stories, either stories that you read, heroines and heroes from our past, our own traditions, the Maccabees, you know, with Hanukkah or whatever, like something with power in it. Like, yeah, we have been through some tough times as Jews. Look how they dealt with it, and look that they survived, and look that we're all here and we're all doing it again, and we can do it again. And then that also brings them a feeling of inspiration, or, you know, a connection even to our histories and our past and our ancestors. I just kept talking, Rivkah, until you came back.
Good, great. Okay, and Gilla's gone. Gilla, you've disappeared. Well, I think we should end here then, if that's okay. Everyone's good?
Yeah.
Good. And then we'll stop recording and have some Q&A if anyone wants to talk. And thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next month.
Well, we want to thank Gilla and Rivkah and Chava for another illuminating talk. And our next seminar in November will be on Wednesday, November 20th. So shalom from the Northern Negev, the Lower Galilee, Florida, and Jerusalem.